think it's fair to say that no one can stand the star of this movie.
Rachel Zegler is extraordinarily woke, but she's woke in a way that's quite deranged. I truly do believe that.
Excuse me, your curtain. Please allow me to help.
Help? From you?
I didn't mean to offend. I just thought you should know that
That I should know what? That some privileged white guy thinks his opinion matters? Get over your entitlement. I'm not some damsel in distress waiting for you to ride in on your high horse.
They're remaking the movie. They just got rid of the dwarfs. Okay,
but what do they call them?
Why
now,
would they
too?
get rid of the dwarves, though?
Magical creatures.
But they have one token dwarf amongst these magical creatures. You actually just went backwards. You actually just erased the dwarfism side of it. The disability, like we're a disability group. You just erased that whole image.
And if you disagree with this sentiment, just hit the unfollow button. I don't need your business.
This is someone who is as entitled as, I don't need your business. You know what? Maybe Disney does. Maybe you're a tool, you're a pawn in this film. You didn't write it, you didn't direct it. You have nothing to do with the creation of Snow White. Right. You should shut up and do the
This is no ordinary apple, my dear. It's a magic wishing apple. A wishing apple? You offer it to me freely. In place of the patriarchy, you would have a queen! Not white, but diverse, inclusive, and equitable! I will become the leader I know I can be! All shall love me and despair!
I'm gonna stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess. I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
There's something wrong with her. She's disturbed, she's unhappy, and she thinks it's about feminism and the patriarchy and about abortion. But the reality is she's just not stable, like the majority of people in Hollywood. They're just not stable human beings. I would highly advise that you boycott this film, no matter how much your children love Snow White.
I can also be having the greatest time and simultaneously wishing people would stop sending me death threats.
I know this point has been made, but this truly is the worst casting maybe in the history of the film industry.
When I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her. And I can only hope that despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
I am walking into Snow White, 2 p.m., now seating. Let's see how empty it is. I hope it's off the woke we go. I hope. Sound like I hear a couple of people.
It sounds like you're one of the only ones there, just like Rachel Zegler, as it turns out, and we part with this video of Rachel Zegler alone in a theater watching herself. One of the most unlikable humans.
That
ever.
is sadder than when the original Snow White eats the apple.
Rachel Zegler was supposed to be Disney's next Golden Girl. After her breakout role in West Side Story, she landed the lead in Snow White, the kind of part that launches legends. But instead of applause, Rachel's casting lit a firestorm. And now, that fire just exploded into an all-out media inferno. Thanks to The Simpsons. Rachel's downfall didn't begin with The Simpsons. It started the moment she opened her mouth about the original Snow White. During a press junket in mid-2023, clips surfaced of Rachel mocking the 1937 classic. She called the film weird, claimed it was not empowering, and said the prince was a stalker. She rolled her eyes while describing the love story, laughing off the idea that a woman could fall in love with a man she just met. Instead, she promised her version of Snow White would be a bold, independent leader. No romance, no prince, just power. But audiences didn't cheer. They cringed. What was supposed to be a modern update came across as arrogant and disrespectful. People weren't mad that she wanted a feminist twist. They were angry that she seemed to hate the very movie she was hired to celebrate. Clips from those interviews went viral fast. Conservative outlets, Disney fans, and even neutral commentators slammed Rachel for acting like she was above the material. Critics said she sounded more like a political activist than an actress. Instead of building excitement, her comments triggered a culture war. Major YouTubers and pop culture analysts dissected every word she said. The thumbnails were brutal. Woke Snow White ruins Disney. Rachel Zegler out of control. Disney doomed. And the views? Millions. Rachel's tone didn't help. She didn't just critique the story. She acted like it was beneath her. In one now infamous interview, she said, "It's not 1937 anymore." That single line became a meme, twisted into every form of mockery possible. Fans who grew up loving Snow White felt insulted. Grandparents who watched it in theaters felt dismissed. Even younger viewers who supported reimaginings said Rachel's delivery was smug and condescending. It didn't feel like she was celebrating change. It felt like she was tearing down something beloved just to make a statement. When the criticism started rolling in, Rachel doubled down. She told people to unfollow her if they didn't like her stance. She claimed she was being attacked by people stuck in the past and accused critics of bigotry. Instead of softening her tone, she sharpened it. Her social media became a battleground of clapbacks and defiant posts. The more she fought back, the worse it got. What could have been a smart conversation about progress in media turned into a bitter feud between Rachel and the audience she was supposed to win over. Meanwhile, fans began digging. They uncovered older posts and interviews, adding fuel to the fire. Tweets from years prior resurfaced, where Rachel took jabs at Disney and princess culture in general. The narrative quickly shifted from, "She's just trying to modernize the role," to, "She hates the role she was given." That's when people stopped blaming the studio and started blaming her. Disney, known for tightly controlling its stars' public images, went silent. No defense, no clarification, no support. Rachel was on her own, and the internet didn't let up. Every new comment, every post, every appearance turned into another headline. The backlash wasn't just loud, it was constant. By the time The Simpsons took aim, Rachel was already drowning in bad press. The cartoon didn't start the fire, it just poured gasoline on what was already burning. The moment The Simpsons episode aired, it was like someone dropped a match into a gas leak, and Rachel Zegler was standing right at the center. For weeks leading up to the parody, Rachel had been quietly pulling back from the spotlight. After months of backlash, tone-deaf interviews, and relentless criticism, her PR team had begun a slow campaign of image repair. Comments were filtered, old posts were wiped, new photos showed her smiling gently, dressed down, captioned with vague affirmations about growth and gratitude. There were whispers that she had even hired a new media consultant to steer the ship. It was a fragile attempt at redemption. But just as the storm seemed to calm, The Simpsons aired its episode and torched everything in its path. The episode didn't just include a parody of Snow White. It obliterated the character, and by extension, Rachel, with laser precision. In one instantly iconic scene, the animated Snow White, styled eerily close to Rachel's red carpet look, clutched a poisoned apple and sneered at a well-meaning prince, shouting, "You offer it to me freely, in place of the patriarchy?" Her voice dripped with sarcasm. Her expression twisted into righteous indignation. Then came the kicker. "I will become a diverse, inclusive queen. All shall love me and despair." The line was an obvious mockery of Rachel's real-life statements about turning the character into a leader and leaving behind traditional romance plots. The audience, both in the episode and online, was stunned. And then they laughed. But that wasn't the end. The episode doubled down with another brutal jab, a moment that many called the final nail in Rachel's public coffin. The cartoon version of Snow White turned to the camera and demanded compensation for every hour this film is streamed online. The reference was unmistakable. Months earlier, Rachel had stirred outrage when she suggested in an interview that actors should be paid residuals for streaming time, citing her long hours in costume as justification. At the time, the comment was ridiculed as out of touch. Now it was immortalized in animation, rebroadcast to millions, with every share, clip, and reaction video. Clips from the episode detonated across social media within minutes. On TikTok, users lip-synced to the parody with sarcastic captions like "girl bossing too close to the sun." On YouTube, reaction channels broke down the satire frame by frame, gleefully pointing out every line that mirrored Rachel's actual controversies. Twitter, always the epicenter of viral chaos, trended with hashtags like .girlsnowwoke, .Simpsons drag Zegler, and .Rachel Zegler is over party. The memes were vicious. Screenshots of the animated Snow White were edited next to Rachel's real interview stills. Each quote matched perfectly, exposing how little exaggeration was needed to turn satire into reality. Even news outlets that had previously covered Rachel's backlash with caution began openly referencing the Simpsons parody in headlines. Entertainment journalists called it a cultural turning point. TV critics noted that The Simpsons, once criticized for losing its edge, had found its bite again, by biting Rachel. And for millions of viewers, the message was unmistakable. Even The Simpsons, a show that once mocked presidents, celebrities, and empires, had seen Rachel Zegler as fair game. What made it even more brutal was the timing. This was supposed to be the week her image turned around. Her PR team had coordinated a soft relaunch. Charity photos, subtle magazine blurbs, friendly TikToks with co-stars. But all of it was wiped away in one night by an 8-second animated line and a poisoned apple joke. And unlike social media noise, this wasn't a tweet she could delete or a comment she could turn off. This was canon, broadcast, syndicated, immortalized in the pop culture machine. Rachel didn't post anything in response. No apology, no defense, not even a vague quote about kindness. The silence was deafening, because for the first time, it wasn't just trolls or critics coming for her. It was one of the most iconic, long-running shows in television history, and they were laughing too. Rachel Zegler's silence after the Simpsons episode was more than just a pause. It was a vacuum, a void where damage control should have gone. For someone who had previously been outspoken, quick to respond to criticism, and often combative with detractors online, her decision to say nothing was jarring. She didn't post a statement. She didn't like or share anything. She didn't even show her face at any of the usual events or interviews. In the age of hypervisibility, where celebrities curate every minute of their public lives, her total disappearance wasn't just unusual, it was strategic. But that strategy may have backfired. Behind the scenes, that silence was rattling studios. According to verified casting records from 2 major production firms in Burbank, Rachel's name had been removed from the priority shortlist for 3 tentpole films slated for 2026 and 2027. One of them, a big-budget YA fantasy franchise, had reportedly been considering Rachel for the lead since late 2022. But after the Snow White backlash and the Simpsons parody ignited a fresh wave of negativity, her viability as a bankable star took a hit. Executive memos flagged her Q score, a measure of public perception, as in rapid decline, noting a measurable drop in favorability across female and Gen Z demographics. In simple terms, she was no longer a safe bet. Brand partnerships followed suit. A major European fashion house that had previously dressed Rachel for red carpets and campaigns quietly removed her from their spring campaign lineup. Archived screenshots of internal scheduling showed her name erased from promotional plans less than a week after The Simpsons aired. The brand made no public announcement, but fans noticed. Ads that had been teased for months vanished. Social media posts were deleted. Fashion bloggers began whispering that she'd been soft-dropped, a PR term for phasing out a celebrity without acknowledging the fallout. Other smaller endorsements followed, some choosing to pause all activation, involving her likeness until the climate stabilizes. Meanwhile, the fan base that once rallied around Rachel began to fracture. On Reddit threads and Discord servers dedicated to Disney live-action films, longtime supporters began questioning whether Snow White was even worth defending. "I wanted to love this version," one fan wrote in a now-viral comment, "but it feels like they've turned something magical into a lecture." YouTube videos originally made to promote anticipation for the film were suddenly flooded with negative comments. Even fans who supported progressive updates admitted the execution had become clumsy, even embarrassing. One former fan stated bluntly, "It's not about feminism, it's about ego." Public sentiment had shifted, and fast. The backlash was no longer confined to political circles or angry YouTubers. It had reached middle ground audiences, people who weren't obsessed with culture wars, but simply wanted to enjoy a Disney remake. Parents voiced concerns over taking their kids to a film embroiled in controversy. Teachers and librarians, once excited about using the movie in classroom discussions, began looking elsewhere. What was supposed to be a progressive, empowering reimagining had morphed into a lightning rod for division and fatigue. Hollywood noticed, not just the fans, not just the brands, but the entire machine. Talent managers began rethinking pitches. Publicists scrubbed mentions of Snow White from their client reels. Screenwriters quietly distanced themselves from the project. And other rising actresses were suddenly being floated as replacements in future collaborations that once seemed tailor-made for Rachel. In private, the conversation had changed. She wasn't the next big thing. She was a cautionary tale. All the while, Rachel said nothing. And in that silence, the industry said everything. What began as a glittering fairy tale for Rachel Zegler has now morphed into a case study in how Hollywood builds, breaks, and buries its stars faster than ever before. Just 2 years ago, she was the ingenue everyone was watching. Handpicked by Steven Spielberg for West Side Story, praised by critics, adored by press, and hailed as the next face of Disney royalty, Rachel had the entire industry at her feet. She wasn't just seen as a rising star, she was the star. Casting her as Snow White, the centerpiece of a billion-dollar brand reboot, was seen as a coronation, a win for inclusivity, for modern storytelling, for the future of film. But now, that same casting is being dissected not as a bold step forward, but as a fateful mistake. The public's turning point didn't come in a single moment, but through a slow accumulation of missteps, each one chipping away at the carefully polished image studios had invested so much in. It started with offhand remarks about outdated fairy tales. Then came the pay comments, the tone-deaf interviews, the erasure of dwarfs from the storyline, and a growing sense that Rachel wasn't embracing a classic. She was trying to replace it. These moments, on their own, might have been recoverable, but in a digital age where every misstep is replayed, clipped, memed, and magnified, they didn't fade, they piled up. And the image that emerged wasn't one of a confident, progressive lead. It was of an actress who seemed to hold contempt for the very role she was supposed to honor.